Rome, in their attempt to secure full hegemony over the southern Italian peninsula, declared war on the free city of Tarentum. Tarentum sent out a request for support. They had many Greek allies dotted around the mainland who could have answered the call, but they only had one man in mind, Pyrrhus of Epirus. The man would sail a massive army, including 20 elephants, across the Adriatic, defeated the Romans twice, invaded Sicily, defeated the Carthaginians, basically Darth Mauling the two most powerful states in the Mediterranean world, until ultimately he no longer had the manpower to keep on going. This series is a geopolitical series that will focus on the diplomatic events that took place during the war. Today I will explain why the conflict happened and why Pyrrhus answered the call. The story begins around 600 years prior to the war. The Greek colonists settled the land of southern Italy. Over many years, Rome slowly built up and developed into the main regional power, securing alliances with many Italian states. This guaranteed the protection of the mighty Rome for the people, but the people would have to fight for Rome from time to time. These allies were known as the Soci, and I say allies with quotation marks as they were really more like vassals but with a fancy name. In 283 BC, 3 years before the war, a highland people known as the Leukemians would often raid the Greek colonial cities. One of these cities, Pyrrhi, was besieged by them. By this point, the Greeks had formed a union called the Italiate League to deal with threats like this. Problem was, the League had become slowly dominated by the city of Tarentum, the most powerful member of the League. On the one hand, the Pyrrhi needed relief, but to accept it from the League meant more power and acceptance of Tarentine domination. The Pyrrhi were not alone with this distrust of Tarentum. The issue was a political one too. Tarentum was ruled by a democratic faction, whereas power was in the hands of the aristocrats in Pyrrhi, natural rivals. So instead, the Pyrrhi reached out to Rome, who answered the call and destroyed the Leukemians. Rome decided to leave a garrison in Pyrrhi, but all this greatly displeased Tarentum and was a threat to their power over the other colonies. Tarentum had a treaty with Rome in play. Rome could not sail ships into the Gulf of Taranto, but during this crisis, 10 Roman ships seeking refuge after a brutal storm ended up in the Gulf and harboured themselves in the Tarentine port. The Tarentines waited until the Roman army had left the region and then struck at the ships in dock. This was followed by the Tarentines marching an army to Pyrrhi, expelling the Roman garrison along with many Pyrrhi pro-Roman nobles. The city would then be sacked. Rome responded diplomatically, requesting that they return the captives from the ships to Rome and allow the Pyrrhi nobles re-entry into their home city in exchange for peace. Tarentum turned the offer down twice, as Rome proposed it yet again once they arrived with their armies. Tarentum was a limited democracy, with its people descended from Spartans. The culture and politics of the city are always important to understand, as this explains why they turned down Rome. If war was popular with the people, and it seems it was, then democracy has spoken and war it is. But the Tarentines were still smart. They knew they could not win, and so called upon the Greeks of the mainland to come to their aid. And now we zoom out. Alexander the Great was dead, and his empire had fragmented into many warring states known as the Diadochi, or successors. That's a story for another video. All we need to know here is Pyrrhus of Epirus was a second cousin of Alexander, and the closest blood relative to potentially take the throne. With the death of his father, he was forced from his throne of Epirus and exiled. The boy proved through his adventures and conquests that he was not only of Alexander's blood, but of the great king's mind as well. Serving as a general with the Egyptian Ptolemies, he gained great experience. Antigonus I, a former general of the then dead Alexander, ruler and founder of the Antigonid Empire, when asked which of the great king's successors will be most successful, replied with Pyrrhus, if he lives to be old. Hannibal, when asked who the second greatest conqueror of their history was, replied with the name Pyrrhus, ranking himself as third, Alexander, of course, being number one at the time. Pyrrhus retook his throne of Epirus and was ready to prove himself, hence accepted the plea from Tarentum, on the condition that Tarentum paid for his services and granted him supreme command of the war effort. Pyrrhus owed Tarentum a favour, as they had helped him conquer Corcyra, a city on Corfu, in the past. Another known motivator was that he wanted to help because they were both culturally Greek, and so he saw it as partially his sense of duty. However, the real popular known reason is because Pyrrhus wanted to build an empire for himself in southern Italy. I, however, want to take the theory a step further. I do not specialise in this specific era, so maybe this theory has been proposed already. I do not know. I am just saying what I think. Alexander the Great, after inheriting Macedon, took his troops into Anatolia to liberate the Greeks and use their support to launch a full invasion of the Persian Empire. Persia was an empire that long tormented the Greek coastal colonies, and so had become a major enemy. The West appeared the same, Greek coastal colonies that had been terrorised by Romans and Carthaginians, two larger empires. All the other successors were fighting amongst themselves over the remnants of Alexander's empire to see who was strongest. Pyrrhus, instead, saw that the best way to inherit Alexander's empire would be for him to create his own, equal, super-state, but in the west, and then the east would stand no chance against his claim at all. It was, arguably, a strategic, geopolitical masterpiece. This move, combined with his heroic victories, makes Pyrrhus of Epirus personally one of my favourite historical figures, one who needs more recognition in the modern world. Where is the Pyrrhus movie or HBO series? I want one. Anyway, the king of Macedon at the time, Ptolemy Serenus, even sent Pyrrhus 5,000 phalanxes to assist him. The Macedonian throne, as I will go over in some later video, was very unstable, and Pyrrhus had a very good claim to it. The strategic reasoning behind this gift of troops was not for good relations or to help fellow Greeks, but to reinforce Pyrrhus's motive to go. If Pyrrhus is fighting in the west, then that is one less rival to combat in the east. And another opinion, but I really believe that if Pyrrhus had luck on his side and a larger inheritance, basically starting on an equal footing to Alexander, then he really could have achieved this goal. But alas, despite putting up an incredible fight, it all failed, and the independence of the Greek world with it. I hope you enjoyed and learnt something. There's a few more videos in this series to come, so I hope you are looking forwards to them. If you want a more detailed story of Pyrrhus that goes into the battles and campaigns, check out the Kings and Generals series. It's a fantastic one. They don't go too much into diplomacy and the geopolitics, which my series is about, but again, if you want the other side, the war side, well, that's the place to be. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, share with anyone you think may be interested, it really helps me out, but for now, until the next one, this has been the history of diplomacy.